Welcome to the Comedy Reset Spotlight. This is the place to be if you want to hear from some of the most innovative and exciting comedy creators from around the globe. On this podcast, you'll hear from a variety of guests who are pushing the boundaries of what comedy can be. If you're looking for fresh perspectives and new ideas, this is the podcast for you.
Episode 10. Kansas stand-up comedian, Jay Patterson.
When did you first start doing stand-up comedy?
I began in January of 2020 at the suggestion of a life coach that I had been working with.
What made you want to become a stand-up comedian?
I had actually tried in my 30s to do some open mics, and I really liked it, but life got in the way. So I began a couple of years ago saying, let's do this. Let's just try it and see what happens.
Who were some of your influences?
I was always a fan of the female comedians and the males also on Saturday Night Live. I loved that type of humor, and I loved Gilda and I loved Tina, and I just really thought back in the day, why didn't I try to be an actress and a comedian on TV shows? I really did.
What was your first time on stage like?
I'm kind of a show-off person. So I was nervous. I wasn't nervous about being on stage, but I was very nervous if I was going to remember my set. And it didn't bother me if there was only one person in the audience or if there was 20 in the audience. I just really always went up and just told myself, this is for fun, and let's just not worry about it. So for the most part, I've been pretty comfortable and have really enjoyed it.
What's your favorite joke?
I'm really not much of a joke person. I'm more of a storyteller. So to be honest, I really don't have a favorite joke.
What's the worst heckler experience you've ever had?
I personally have not had a heckler, but to be truthful, I think that I was a heckler in a sense, not knowing that I was. But sometimes if I was listening to a comedian, at first I would say things like, oh, what does that mean? I didn't realize that that was heckling. So actually, I've been the one who heckles.
What's the best gig you've ever had?
Our best gig was here in Topeka at the Foundry, and it was a contest. And I believe there was 14 or 15 of us, but we had over 100 people in the audience, and that was so exciting. It really was. Having a big audience just kind of levels everything up for fun.
What's the worst gig you've ever had?
My worst gig was an opportunity to put on my own open mic, and no one showed up. It was just me and my husband and a couple of friends, but I went ahead and did my set just like there was 100 people out there. But I just have had to learn that I cannot be down about these performances or lack of people or whatever.
How do you deal with stage fright?
Thankfully, I haven't had too many cases of stage fright, but believe me, I've had a couple of cases of flop sweat, which is really awful. I don't know when I have ever sweated so much. Was it stage fright? I don't think so, but it was an audience not paying attention at all, and I was just a little mortified.
What was the most unexpected response you've ever gotten to one of your jokes?
I was performing at the Grizzly Pear in Greenwich Village, and a gentleman got up after me and complimented me on my set. He said, "You are really funny." Come to find out, he had been on America's Got Talent, and I've seen him on some TV shows. So I felt really excited that somebody acknowledged my set who was a little up on the famous scale.
How do you prepare for a show?
Well, I start looking through my different sets and figuring out, is it clean? Can I use some swear words? And then, and also depending on how much time I have. And so I just gather my material and I start putting it into order about how I would like to say it. And then I'll spend, especially the day of, I'll spend quite a bit of time going over it, trying to keep it clear in my thoughts. And then I just go for it. I used to spend a lot of time working on memorizing, but now some of them that I have done often enough, it's a little easier for me to just get up and perform unless I have a bunch of new stuff.
What's the best advice you've ever been given about stand-up comedy?
The best advice I've been given is to just have fun. Be prepared, but also be okay with getting paid, not getting paid, audience, not much audience. Just go out and do something that you enjoy.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given about stand-up comedy?
To quit being so memorized and be a little more natural, but also to be off the cuff, which I did try a couple of times, but that does not work. And I want to look a little more professional than that.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about stand-up comedy?
I myself had the misconception that basically it was really easy and that all you had to do was just get up there and tell stories. It's not that easy. It's all about trimming down your stories and being precise and really knowing the material. Just going up there and blabbing around and saying cuss words is not going to get it.
What do you believe is the key to success in stand-up comedy?
I think the key is to just have confidence in yourself and in your material and not listen and take other people's routines and compare it to yours. Just be yourself and use your own thoughts and your own stories.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle that stand-up comedians face?
I would think the main obstacle now would be having open mics in your area. Zoom mics are okay for practicing, but it's much better for me personally to be in front of a live audience. I know that there are some areas that don't have clubs that are easily able to go to and do open mics. So I would say that could be a huge obstacle depending on where you live.
What do you think sets stand-up comedy apart from other forms of comedy?
In stand up, you don't have writers writing your material. You are doing everything yourself. And you're writing and you're studying and you're doing classes and you're practicing and rehearsing. And it's all your own material.
What are the benefits of stand-up comedy?
If you have some goals like I do, one of my goals would be is to be a motivational speaker, and doing the stand-ups are helping me be more comfortable in front of audiences. And it also, as I look at my recordings, it helps me talk better, limiting, some words that get annoying. There's just a lot to it, even to just make yourself a better communicator.
What's your process for writing jokes?
My process varies. Some weeks I tell you I'm just so clever, I just can write and put stuff down, and other weeks I have nothing. And so basically, what I do try to do is I must write down my thought immediately, whether it's in my phone, on a piece of paper, because I will forget it. And you wouldn't believe the and paper that I have. I've typed, but I have decided I think writing things out several times is better for me than typing.
What's the most important thing for a stand-up comedian to remember?
Basically, at the level that many of us that I know personally, that we're doing something and we can't have expectations of fame and fortune, I think would be important.
What do you think are the best techniques for dealing with hecklers?
Does not apply.
What do you think are the biggest mistakes that stand-up comedians make?
From my area, just watching some get up totally unprepared. Also, please, 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 the graphic sexuality stuff and the raunchiness, but also quit being lazy and just saying that you can say the F word a zillion times in your set and that it's funny.
What is the best way to learn stand-up comedy?
For me, it has been a blessing to have all these classes available online and to learn from the professionals, the coaches who can help you hone in on your craft and give you really good and sound advice. And for me, that has been very important.
What do you think is the best way to improve as a stand-up comedian?
Performing as much as you can, but also know there's times during a year, which I have experienced this year, that sometimes I just have to lay off for a little while. But then when I get back into it, going to classes, listening, talking to other comics, but performing and really working on your sets is the best thing to do.
What has stand-up comedy taught you about yourself?
That even at my age, that I can write and I can be funny. And I've had this in my whole life. I wasn't particularly a class clown, but I always had really good stories in a group of people. So it's taught me to really appreciate this gift I have.
What motivates you to keep performing stand-up comedy?
What motivates me is to see what just comes along. I have had some really great opportunities. I'm on a podcast called Lunch Therapy a few times a month. All of a sudden, I'll get invited to a show in Kansas City. I'm getting ready to do a fundraiser for Toys for Tots. And just having opportunities like that crop up really keep me wanting to perform.
What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about doing stand-up comedy?
Does not apply.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we did not cover?
Yes, I would like to thank you and the other professional comedians and writers out there that I've taken classes with for being so available and so helpful to the many of us that have been taking classes.
I've been your host, Rob Chaffee. Don't forget to laugh today. It's good for you. Comedy Reset Spotlight is a podcast that brings you today's freshest and funniest comedy creators. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to hear more.